Hello everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel. Would you like to speak English more fluently and more confidently? Well, you're exactly where you should be. In today's lesson, we're going to be working on 4 different steps that you can follow in order to immerse yourself in English and turn your learning process into a much more natural one. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Andrea Rial, a teacher of English from Argentina. I help pre-intermediate and intermediate adult students speak English more fluently and more confidently. Having said this, let's plunge right into today's lesson. First of all, the first thing we need to do is to understand the way our brain works. Did you know that consistent exposure to the language, consistent exposure to English, contributes to a more natural and fluent acquisition of the second language? So what does this mean? The more exposed you are to the language, the more content, the more structures, the more vocabulary you will acquire. Let me give you a personal example, not connected to English in this case. When I was at secondary school, I used to be really good at maths. I could solve any kind of maths problems, and I loved memorizing rules and well, everything and anything connected to maths. But then when I finished secondary school, I stopped being exposed to those contents, those concepts, and gradually I started forgetting everything. And today I can say I don't remember a thing regarding maths. So what does this mean? Okay, this constant exposure is the one that helps you keep all the content you have in your brain active. So imagine if you activate the content related to English once a week, and if you activate that every day, what difference do you think that will make? Kind of obvious, right? Let's make a parallelism, an analogy with a kid learning to ride a bicycle. Think of a kid who practices just once a week and another one that might be practicing every day. Who do you think will feel more confident by the end of the first month? Again, another obvious answer, right? Okay, how can we apply all this to our learning process, to the acquisition of this second language? Okay, there are different benefits that you can get by being exposed to the second language regularly. First of all, you will get lots of cognitive benefits. This would be something like going to the gym, but for the brain, working out, because you activate several areas in your brain that might not be activated by doing other activities. So, switching from your first language into the second language stimulates the brain a lot. So think about that. You're kind of exercising your brain every day if you are in constant contact with the language. Then there's a lot of implicit learning. Much of the language learning process is implicit. So by being exposed, I don't know, by listening to songs, by watching films, etc., there is a lot of language that you will be internalizing naturally, not by being aware of that process. Like compare these to learning a set of fixed vocabulary in a regular class. Another benefit, you increase your motivation. Why? Well, the more you expose yourself to the language, the more you understand, the more interest that generates in yourself. And so this is like a kind of circle that in turn also leads to feeling more confident and then speaking more fluently. Because you feel you can understand English speakers better, you can understand more than you did in the past, and so you will feel you can handle new things, and okay, you can perhaps give a presentation at work, socialize whenever you're traveling, etc. Okay, knowing all the benefits that our brain gets by constant exposure, let's work on these 4 tips that are going to help you increase the time you are exposed. First of all, one super simple step is to set your phone in English. Why? You might be wondering, Andre, will I really speak English more fluently by setting my phone in English? Well, the answer might be no or not directly. But this simple step, together with another simple step, together with another one, and then another one, all that combination will in turn lead you to speaking English more fluently. So it's not just one thing, but it's the combination of different techniques that will help you reach your goals. In this case, if you do this, if you set your phone in English, you will be exposed to perhaps lots of terms that you're not going to find anywhere else. You're not going to learn these kind of terms in a regular class, let's say. Let me give you an example. I guess almost everybody today has WhatsApp. Do you know what that section in which you can post pictures, videos, phrases for 24 hours is called? Well, in English, that is called an update. And perhaps you had no idea that that was the name it was given in English. Because, for example, in my case in particular, the word in Spanish is completely different from the one in English. So again, you are exposed to lots of terms that you might not find anywhere else. And think about the regularity in which you are going to be activating your brain in English. How many times a day do you grab your phone? 20? 40? 60? You name it. But all those times in which you grab your phone to send a message, to answer a phone call, you will be exposed to the English language. So this is my first step, and this is something I tell every student of mine, that they have to set their phones in English. But as you can see here, there's another picture of a GPS. Why? For the same reason. If you use your GPS, your sat-nav in English, you will be exposed to lots of phrases that perhaps you might not learn anywhere else, or at least not in a regular lesson. And perhaps you might be thinking this at this very moment. Andre, what if I have to go to a place I don't know and there's something I don't understand? I might get lost. Okay, why don't you set your sat-nav in English and activate it for those trips that you already know? Even though you might know how to get from your house to your friend's house, why don't you turn on this in order to start being exposed to the phrases you might get there? I don't know. First thing you get on a sat-nav if you are driving on a road is reminder, turn on your headlights. So the word reminder might, okay, yeah, this is a phrase you use, or this is the word you use when you want to make somebody remember something. Oh, so the lights at the front of a car are called headlights. And this might happen unconsciously. It's not that you're going to be paying attention to this in an active way, let's say. But well, as I said before, this is a very simple step that you can follow, and it will help you be exposed to the English language many times during a day. If you don't know how to do it, on my Instagram page at Andrea Rial, okay, there is a very short reel on how to do that, on how to set your phone in English. Okay, tip number 2, watch films and series in English. You might be saying, oh my goodness, that's really difficult. But I usually tell my students that they don't need to watch the film with the subtitles off. At this level, at this stage, I would even recommend to activate the subtitles in English. Why? Because you will be exposed both through the listening, you will be developing your listening skills, and you're going to be reading at the same time. So you're going to be comparing what you hear and what you read, because perhaps you might be exposed to terms that you don't know. And if you don't read how they are spelled, you might get lost. And one of the things we have to bear in mind is that you shouldn't lose motivation. If you do something that makes you feel uncomfortable, that makes you feel you won't reach your goals, okay, we have to think over what techniques you're going to be using. But again, if you have the film in English, film, series, it doesn't matter, and the subtitles are also in English, that's going to help you follow the thread, that's the plot of the story, more easily. If this technique is also a bit demanding at this stage for you, what you could do is to, instead of watching a new film, try to go over something you have already seen, or perhaps part of a series, an episode that you have already seen, and do this. Listen to that series, to that part in English, and activate the subtitles at the same time. What are the benefits of okay, watching films, series, whatever in English? You are exposed to authentic language, spoken English, colloquial expressions, even slang. And there is also another benefit, the visual aid that you have there. What does that mean? Imagine listening to a podcast in English. You can only rely on what you hear. Whereas if you're watching a film, you have the facial expressions of the actors, and even the gestures that are going to help you understand what's going on. Let me give you an example. Imagine somebody says, "Oh, that's so awful." Is awful a positive or a negative word? By looking at the facial expression of the person saying that, you will automatically understand that that word is negative. And the same thing will happen with any positive word that you hear. "Oh, I'm so thrilled." Okay, so thrilled must be something positive. This is, again, something unconscious that happens in your brain whenever you're exposed to the language. So, another thing that will be an asset if you watch films or series in English is that you're going to be exposed to different accents. I always recommend the same film to my students to compare British and American English. Notting Hill. That's a beautiful romantic comedy. And you have Julia Roberts' accent, American accent, and Hugh Grant's British accent. And it's really interesting to pay attention to those scenes in which they talk to each other, because you will be aware of the differences between one accent and the other. And talking about this, there's also something really, really useful that you will get through films, which is real pronunciation of structures, not just isolated words, but structures. Imagine learning the future going to in English, and perhaps there's somewhere a text and you read the question, "What are you going to do?" But is that the way that English people actually pronounce that question? No, it isn't. What do they say? "What you gonna do?" It's something much shorter, yes, and if you're exposed to the language through films, you will get this real pronunciation of phrases, and as I said before, okay, slang, everyday expressions, etc. One other important thing about this is that you learn not just the meaning of words, but the meaning and the usage of words. I don't know if you have seen my lesson on how to activate your active vocabulary, how to boost your active vocabulary. One of the things that we focused on a lot was on this thing, on the students should not just focus on the meaning of words, but the meaning and the usage. What do I mean by this? Okay, imagine you are learning the word deadline, and this is the same example I gave in that lesson. Perhaps you check it at the meaning of the word in a dictionary, you look it up, and it says, okay, the last moment in which you can do something. Great, you know the meaning of the word deadline, but do you know how to use it? Okay, you should also focus on those other words that are usually or that usually go together with the word deadline. For example, you meet a deadline, you miss a deadline, yeah? So again, another benefit is that by the context that the film gives you, you learn both meaning and usage of words. Can you imagine how this might motivate you in order to go on learning the language, in order to feel confident enough to speak? Okay, let's move on to tip number 3. In this case, my recommendation is to find a conversation partner. Why? If you're taking English lessons, in the lesson itself, perhaps you are pretending to use the language. If both you and the teacher have or share the same mother tongue. So, if you find a conversation partner who doesn't speak your first language, you will have no other option other than speaking English in order to make your message clear, in order to transmit your ideas. With my students, I carry out two different projects. One, which is a more individual one, in which two students who don't share the same mother tongue have to have weekly video calls in order to practice their English. I've got lots of examples of students that have been participating in this project for years, and it's incredible how much their confidence and fluency increases. Both, again, confidence and fluency increase because of the exposure they have, and because they feel they can literally communicate their thoughts, their ideas. And then another project I also share with my students has to do with participating in bigger lessons, speaking lessons with students from other countries. And the same thing, they have to use their communication skills in real life situations. Okay, if you don't have this possibility of perhaps participating in this kind of activities, you could also Google conversation partners, English conversation partners, and most probably you will find lots of pages where you can perhaps enroll and have the possibility of talking to other people in English. Last but not least, tip number 4, use post-it notes. Say, what? A post-it note? Yes. What for? Well, to learn useful and meaningful vocabulary. If there's a term you want to remember, perhaps if you just hear it once, it's not going to be enough to internalize that phrase, that concept, and you won't be able to use it naturally. But for example, if there's something, let's think of a phrase. Have you ever heard the phrase a whale of a time? To have a whale of a time. That means to have a wonderful time. And whale is the animal, the sea animal, right? Okay, imagine you want to start using that phrase in your everyday English. Well, you can write it down on a post-it note. You can use different colors. The more colors, the more things you add to that post-it note, the more memorable it will become for your brain. So, for instance, if I had to learn that phrase, I would write to have a, and perhaps I would draw the picture of a whale. I'm a terrible, terrible drawer. I'm a disaster at that, but that's not the point. It doesn't matter. As long as you understand what you're doing, it's more than enough. And then perhaps on the other side, I would write a personal example. I had a whale of a time at my brother's birthday party. Remember how important it is, I always insist on this in every lesson that we talk about vocabulary, how important it is to make the vocabulary your own. What does that mean? Write down personal examples. If you don't have a brother, don't write anything about a brother. If your brother's birthday party was boring, don't say I had a whale of a time. The examples should be true for you, because again, that way you will be making connections with the term, with the phrase, and that in turn becomes more memorable. You are helping your brain learn more vocabulary, more language. Okay, so let's summarize today's lesson. We said that there are lots of benefits of being exposed to English as much as you can. We said that it will give you lots of cognitive benefits because you will be activating the area in your brain where the second language is. I really don't know exactly where that is, but it is somewhere there. There's a lot of implicit learning in this process, in this exposure, because you will be acquiring language without being aware of that. And this exposure increases motivation, and this in turn leads to feeling more confident and more fluent. What 4 techniques have we said? Okay, first of all, set your phone in English. This way you will be exposed to reading English all the time, as often as you grab your phone. Remember that if you don't know how to do it, you can find a short tutorial on my Instagram page. Then the other thing we said is that you should watch films and series in English with subtitles in English on because of all the benefits we have already said. You learn everyday expressions, you're exposed to different accents, you learn the pronunciation, the real pronunciation of phrases, of questions, and so the list goes on. Try to find a conversation partner because, as we said before, this would be like being exposed to English through reading. This would enhance your listening skills. And here you would be focusing on speaking, on developing your conversation skills. So try to find a conversation partner and get involved in real life conversation. One thing I mentioned in a previous lesson was that if there's no possibility of finding a conversation partner, you might also talk to yourself in English. And then last but not least, we said use Post-it notes, and in this case, your writing skills will be involved to try to learn new terms. I didn't say this when we talked about Post-it notes, but try to stick them somewhere where you would see them quite often. I don't know, on your fridge, on the screen of your laptop. I remember once my mother is learning French, and she couldn't remember the words for right and left in French. And so I said, okay, why don't you write those 2 terms down and place them on the left side of the fridge and on the right side of the fridge. Okay, after a couple of days, she had already internalized those terms. So you see, by doing or by following all these steps, you will be helping your brain connect to the language much more frequently and take all those terms that you will be acquiring unconsciously to your long-term memory. Okay, so we have come to the end of today's lesson. Hope you have enjoyed it. Please give this video a like if you found it useful, and then tell me in the comments which of these 4 tips you're going to start using today in order to immerse yourself in English and turn your learning process into a much more natural one. Subscribe to my channel in order to get notifications of every video I upload, of every live session that I give, and remember to activate the bell as well in order to get that notification immediately. I also invite you to visit my Instagram page at Andrea Rial, okay, in order to get short tips and simple things that you can do to become a more fluent and a more confident speaker of English. So thank you very much for watching. See you next week. Take care.